In this episode, I'm going to show you how to paint everyone's favorite armor color, white. Using Stormtroopers from Star Wars Legion, I'll show you a quick and easy, repeatable way to make your army look nice and smooth. I'm Dan, and this is Create Minis. We start out by removing the mold lines. The mold lines need to be removed so that way when we add the contrast paint, it doesn't pool up against these unsightly lines. The lines you should be worried about are any lines on any flat surface that aren't supposed to be there. Particularly, keep an eye on the thighs, the lower legs, the shoulder pad, and the helmet, especially the helmet area. Cleaning the mold lines is probably the least fun part of this process, but I assure you it's worth the time and effort. Take your time and remove as many as you can, using the back of your X-Acto knife. Once your mold lines are clean, it's time to attach the figure to something you can paint. Now, I use these little discs I found on Amazon. They're just extra bases. I got about 100 of them for next to no cost. I put a tiny dab of super glue on just the corner of the foot so that way I can easily remove him later. Otherwise, if you don't want to use this, you can also use an old cork you have with some poster tack or something similar. Keep in mind, however you attach your figures, that it's only temporary and you're going to be removing them later to put them on their permanent base. Now it's time to prep the figures for priming. In order to do that, I take some poster tack and attach all of the figures onto a paint stick. The paint stick allows you to be able to easily rotate the figures to ensure that you get primer over the entire surface of each one. For primer, I use a flat white primer. You don't need a fancy primer, just one that's going to offer good coverage without going on too thick. Spray nice, even coats from a good distance, but ensure you rotate the models to get adequate coverage throughout the entire model. With our models primed and dry, now we're going to start the painting process. And to start, we're going to be using Apothecary White by Citadel. It's a contrast paint and will create a shading effect on your models. Saturate your brush and begin to coat the model. Notice how with this paint, the lower areas in the model, the recessed areas, begin to have a darker shade than the highlighted areas that are raised. Use your brush to push this paint around to ensure adequate coverage. Then, look for it to pool in certain flat spots and gently wick away the excess paint with your brush. While we do that, now's a perfect time for me to remind you to like and subscribe for more painting videos like this. Once your model is adequately covered, be sure to make sure that there isn't heavy pools of it left over in the flat spots. If you try to remove this too late, once the paint begins to dry, it'll cause a coffee stain type effect. So be sure to wick the paint away while there's plenty of moisture left in it. Continue this process on each unit in the squad. Once it's complete, then we'll move on to detailing the black areas. Now we need to begin to color in the recessed areas around the armor. For this, I use a black paint. I choose Vallejo, but you can use whatever brands you want. It just needs to be your normal black paint. Start on the back side, and underneath, start filling in any recessed area that you see. Make sure you thin your paints so that way the black flows nice and smooth into the small areas. Get a brush with a nice point to it, and try and be as careful as you can. A little bit of run over is okay, and we'll touch this up with white later on. Make sure to take notes of the small areas behind the knees, and then begin working on any exposed area on the front. Now this is usually a smaller area, so you don't have to fill it in if you don't want to. The contrast paint will create a shadow there, but if there's an exposed recess area there, try and thin your paint and get it down in there. Now begin working on the underarms. Again, it's okay if you slop a little bit of black paint on the white armor panels. We can touch that up later with white. Now, since we haven't glued any of the model yet, you can remove the arm to make painting easier. This way you can reach the harder to get areas such as the inner elbows, the inside of the glove and blaster, and underneath the shoulder in the pauldron. For the blaster and glove, I cover the whole thing in black. Again, make sure that your paints are thin and it'll flow nicely into the recessed areas. Take care to note the little guard around his hand, the trigger, and the handle of the gun. When you go to paint the blaster around his forearm, take note of the little details and try and be as steady as you can with your brush. Again, any bit of overpaint we can cover up with white later. Now with the paint dry, we're going to glue the arm back in. I'm using plastic glue. If you are, then be careful not to get it on the paint. It'll eat away at the paint that you just put down. Carefully use the brush, put the paint on the inside of the joint, and apply the arm. Now with your trooper back together and the glue dried, paint the remaining black areas you didn't paint earlier. His other glove, the elbow joints. On some of the individual models, both arms will come off, or on this one in particular, only one arm will come off. Now it's time to detail the helmet. To start, make sure your paint is a little bit thinner than usual. Dab your paintbrush into the eyes and it should almost fill in by itself. Do this on both sides. Next, we're going to take the thin brow above the eyes and paint that black as well. Whoops. See that? Even I made a mistake. The black paint accidentally got on the top of the helmet. No worries though, we'll take some white and we'll cover that up. Now add white to your palette and touch up the areas in which you had a little bit of black overrun onto the white panels of the armor. This is the part where you truly define where the armor panels stop and the black starts. Take your time and clean up all of your edges. With the panels cleaned up, now we're going to add what's called glaze medium to the paint. And what this will do is it will thin the paint and it will also lengthen the drying time, allowing you to work with it a little bit longer. For this part, I usually use 1 drop of glaze medium to whatever paint I have on the palette. Play with the mixture and get it to the correct consistency that you prefer. Now you can take the thinned down white and apply it to the raised edges to create a highlight. slowly apply the paint to those edges. It's thinner, so it will want to run a little bit more. You can slowly dab the paintbrush and watch as some of the paint wicks off onto the surface that you're trying to highlight. Use this to slowly move the paint around exactly where you want it. Watch here as I tap the very tip of the brush against the raised area I'm looking to highlight. You can see the paint wick itself right off onto the part I'm trying to accent. You can then use this paint to try smoothing out other areas of the model. Try applying it to the top of the head, blending in a lot smoother of a highlight. You can also try it on the legs or on the chest itself. Wherever you deem necessary, this can brighten up the Stormtrooper. Now carefully highlight the raised edges around the eyes. Catch the bridge of the nose and the raised area around the eye socket itself. Lightly touch the paintbrush to the raised edge and you'll see the paint wick off onto the raised area. You may need several coats to cover up some of the black overrun. Now that your Stormtrooper is looking brighter, we're going to take the black and we're going to trace the bottom of his boots, differentiating the soles from the rest of the boot. Using a thin paint and the base as a guide, trace a nice, even line around the entire perimeter of the boot. Finally, ensuring that your paint is thin, do the last details on the helmet. Color in the tiny little spots on the front of the helmet using the very tip of the brush. Now it's time to add some color. We're going to color the pauldron. Now, this is your chance to get creative. In the movies, you'll see a lot of orange and black pauldrons. I choose blue here. So try to pick whatever color you think would complement your army. Again, this is a chance to express your creativity and set your army apart. Paint this part in several thin coats, so that way you get ample coverage and a nice solid color. Now, take some of that white you mixed with the glaze medium, mix a little bit of blue into it to get you a nice baby blue color. You're going to take this, and due to it being nice and thin, color in the tiny little marks on the sides of the helmet. Again, just touch the tip of the brush and watch the paint wick itself into the opening. Now it's time to add some highlights to the dark areas. I use German gray from Vallejo, but any dark gray will do. Take the dark gray and begin touching the raised areas on the gun with the side of your brush. Catching only the raised areas will create a highlighted look and give the gun a lot more depth. can use this same technique to highlight parts of the hand. Picture which side the light would hit, and lightly wipe the side of your brush along those parts of the fingers. This will create a highlighted effect on his gloves. No matter which type of weapon or the size of the weapon, the technique still applies. Highlight the raised edges, whether it be the little ribs you see on the front of the gun, or the long edges along the long side. Any sharp edge, highlight with the German gray. One more optional detail that I love to add to my troops is just a little dot of color on the end of the gun. Take your red and color in just the very tip of the gun. It gives it a pretty cool effect, but it's totally optional. With your army all painted up, it's time to put them on a base. If you're looking for basing ideas, check out my other video in the link above. It'll show you how to do bases for desert, snow, and wooded areas, all super easy. So for this army, I've chosen to use the upgraded bases provided by Fantasy Flight Games for Star Wars Legion. They're quick and easy, and all I'm going to do here is prime them black, and then paint them with a quick lead belcher base coat, and a little Nuln Oil and highlighting to top it off. Quick and easy, but a super clean look. Finish off the base by painting the rim black, and you're good to go. There's a quick and easy way to paint your Stormtrooper army. Now keep in mind this works for any type of white armor, clone troopers, or maybe some other type of miniature figurines that you're painting. Either way, the same techniques in this video will apply. If you like what you saw, please like this video, share a comment below, and subscribe. It'll help the channel immensely. Also, maybe in the comments below let me know what else you want help painting with. But as always, take time and create.